Hello, hello, hello. This is a quick BigQuery tutorial on how to take an existing table and then make some changes. Might be changing the column name, could be changing the type of a column, adding some columns, removing some columns, or maybe all of the above, and then creating a new table with those changes, but then also have it to be partitioned by the date time that for ingestion. So this is a common thing I found that people want to do, and it's a little bit tricky, and I'll explain why. So I've got a big long query here, but the key thing that I probably need to show, let me see, did I keep a copy here? I didn't. So if we do this, let's go and create a new query, and if I go create table, so I'm creating this one called add group performance. It's just a temporary table. Sorry, it's not a temporary table. I'm adding TMP on the end because we use a temporary table at the end. And I want to do that, but then I want to do like partition by the partition date. If I do this, I can't actually then go on and add a select statement here from ... And it doesn't let you do this if it won't let you add the partition if you're actually selecting from something else. This is part of the docs, and you can partition by a column. So if you have a date field here and that is what you want to be your partition date, perfectly fine. But if you want to partition by the ingestion date, and this matters a lot when you're doing ETL, extract, transform, load, when you're putting data into the database through some other process, and the time you insert it is the time that you want to partition by. And it's usually the date of the ingestion. You can't use that automatic mechanism that you can normally set up in BigQuery if you're also then deriving from another table. Now, I'm guessing you may have come across this. If you're watching this video, you may have come across this problem. It's not really a need to know. It's more like you would want to know when you have the problem. But I'm going to talk through it because hopefully I can help someone out. So the way we do this is we first of all create a base table, and we can actually also create that as a temporary table, so it doesn't write it to the your BigQuery storage. So we can add the word temp, and we can give it any name. It doesn't really matter what name we give it. So I'm just naming it similar to the theme of what we are actually creating. So create temporary table, add group performance. In here, this is where I'm defining my structure. So we can see here that we've got we're taking the date, and we are changing. I think this the type for the date is actually a date time, not timestamp, and I want it to be timestamp. So timestamp, date as date. So I'm changing the type there. This here is a subset of all the fields. I actually have probably another 50 fields that are not included here. If you only wanted to exclude some fields, you could go except and then just list out like the partner name like that. You could actually just do that, but because I've got more fields I want to leave out than in, I have to specify all the fields that I want to keep. So I've specified those, and at the very end here, I've also created a new field that doesn't exist, and that's a struct. So this is, if from another programming language, you might think of this as like an object, and it has a property of migrated, a property of file name with the value of migrated, a property of location with the value of migrated, and then we've taken the existing partition times as uploaded at and last modified, and that whole thing is wrapped up in a field called metadata. If you've dealt with structs before, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it might be a little interesting, but you may deal with them one day. The reason why I needed to put a value here is to make sure that the struct could be correctly typed. Because if I just put null in these fields, when I go down to follow the next steps, it won't actually have a type for that field, and it will fail. There are ways around this by using the SDKs. The BigQuery CLI is also really good at doing the same thing, but if you want to do the whole thing in SQL, you have to use this method. So this could be an empty string, and we could also we are going to kind of get rid of this data as well. We could kind of put nulls in later. But the partition time I know is a timestamp field, which is why I've used that here. Now, you see here that I've gone through and I've basically selected the data, the target data set I want, but I've got limit 1. And that's because really all I want to do is just get one row in there just to get the data types correct. Now we've got this temporary table. What we can do is the next statement we have is create a partition version of that base table. So what we can do is create table if not exists, and this is the actual name that we're going with. So don't be confused by the fact I've got temp here. That's just because I actually have a real table called this underneath, and that's the one that I will eventually be changing. But I wanted to test this out, so I've just added temp at the end. So create table if it doesn't exist, called that. And by using the like keyword, it's going to be like this field above, or sorry, like this table above. And even though that's just a temporary table, we can reference it here. Oops, get back. So we have created a new table like the old table, but I want you to partition by the partition date. In the like syntax, you can also do as and then put in a select query. So create a table like another table, but then also source data from a third table. It's possible. But once again, it's not possible if you want to have partition by partition date or partition time, which is a little bit annoying. So we've now created a partitioned version. The table exists. It's got the metadata, basically the metadata of what we've got at the top here, plus a partition, but it doesn't yet have the data. Therefore, the third statement is select trade desk and the actual underlying temporary table. Select, insert. So we want to insert into this table. So the table we just created, we want to insert into it. And we also have to list out the column names. You normally don't have to list the column names, but if it's a partition table, you have to do that as well. So there's a lot of easy things. This becomes very easy if you don't have the requirements of you needing a partition date, having a partition table, and then also having modifications to your columns. But once you do, it takes a lot more steps. So we have to list out all the columns. Now, these columns are basically all the ones from above. So you see that this here is repeated there, it's repeated up here, and then again, we have to repeat it down here. So we've listed all the columns we want, but then now we get to do this magic select statement, which is select basically the same thing as above, but without the limit 1 from the original table that we wanted to copy in. Now at this point, I actually could put null and null here if I really wanted to. I could make this struct, because it's nullable, I could just make the whole thing null. I don't want to, but I could at this point, simply because I've already defined the type further up in the process. So because of that, I don't need to do it here. And then that will work. So when you run this whole thing, I'll show you what it looks like. You just run. Going back through it again, we have create the temporary table, and then it will give you something to work with, a structure to work with. Then you create the partition version so that you can partition it, and then you insert into that table with the data that you originally wanted to bring in. And you see when we scroll up here, we've got 3 different statements that run. They're both pretty small. The first one is, they're basically going to be, in terms of size and bytes processed, proportional to how much data you've got. The first and the last should be the same. Even if you add a limit, that doesn't change the bytes processed in BigQuery. And then we can see that this is now turned up. We've got all the fields that we expected. We've got metadata, and it's got these fields, and they've got correctly typed. And then if we look in preview, we've got all the different things here, and then we've got the data that we added in. So hopefully this is useful. It took me quite a bit of time to figure out everything I needed to do, but hopefully it helps someone else. Cheers.